A devastating car crash. A cold, lifeless hospital room. Then, a sudden, desperate gasp for air. Waking up exactly 3 years in the past on the morning of a forced wedding to a paralyzed billionaire changes everything, especially when the groom's silent, brooding facade hides a dangerously loud, protective inner voice. The oppressive, suffocating scent of white lilies was the first thing that hit me. It was a smell I associated entirely with funerals specifically, my own. I gasped, my lungs expanding violently as if I had just broken the surface of a freezing ocean. My hands flew to my throat, expecting to feel the burning agony of the poison Nathaniel had forced down it. I expected to see the sterile, peeling walls of the asylum where he and my stepsister Chloe had locked me away. I expected to hear Chloe's mocking laughter echoing as my vision faded to black. Instead, my fingers brushed against intricate French lace. I blinked against the harsh, warm light of a sunlit room. I was sitting in front of a gilded vanity mirror. Staring back at me was a reflection I hadn't seen in years. My own face, youthful, glowing, and framed by a meticulously styled bridal updo. I was wearing the custom Vera Wang gown I had violently torn in a hysterical fit of rage 3 years ago. My breathing hitched. My eyes darted around the luxurious bridal suite at the St. Regis. The date on the digital clock on the bedside table glared at me. October 14th. My wedding day. I hadn't just survived the poisoning. I had been thrown back in time. I was 23 again, and in exactly 1 hour, I was scheduled to walk down the aisle and marry Arthur Pendleton. In my previous life, I believed Arthur was the villain of my story. He was a ruthless, cold-blooded corporate titan who had been paralyzed from the waist down in a mysterious accident 2 years prior. When my father's shipping company, Kensington Maritime, faced total bankruptcy, Arthur swooped in. He bought our debt, but with a medieval condition. I had to marry him. I thought he was a twisted monster who wanted a beautiful trophy wife to punish for his own physical inadequacies. Driven by fear and resentment, I spent our entire brief marriage treating him with absolute disgust. I fell right into the arms of Nathaniel Sterling, my childhood friend, who promised to save me. I helped Nathaniel steal Arthur's confidential corporate files, utterly destroying the Pendleton empire. And my reward? Nathaniel took the money, married Chloe, and left me to rot in an institution, revealing that they had orchestrated my family's ruin from the very beginning. A knock at the door violently pulled me from my thoughts. Josie? It was Chloe. She slipped into the room, wearing a bridesmaid dress that was suspiciously close to white. Her face was twisted in a perfect mask of fake sympathy. The cars are ready. Oh, honey, you look so pale. Remember what we talked about. Nathaniel is waiting out back. You can still run. Don't let that crippled freak chain you to a wheelchair for the rest of your life. A surge of pure, unadulterated rage boiled in my veins. In my past life, I had listened to her. I had caused a massive scene at the altar, humiliating Arthur in front of New York's elite, before reluctantly saying my vows just to save my father from prison. I looked at Chloe, really looked at her, seeing the greedy, manipulative snake hiding behind her glossed lips. I'm not running, Chloe, I said, my voice eerily calm. I stood up, smoothing down the silk of my skirt. Arthur is my fiancé. It would be entirely rude to leave him at the altar. Chloe's jaw actually dropped. Josie, are you insane? He's a monster. He is the man saving our family, I snapped, brushing past her. Now, grab my train. It's time to get married. The walk down the aisle of St. Patrick's Cathedral was a blur of stained glass, orchestral music, and the murmurs of 500 of the wealthiest people on the eastern seaboard. I saw the pity in their eyes. Poor Josephine Kensington, sold to the broken billionaire. But my eyes were fixed straight ahead, at the end of the long white runner. There he was, Arthur Pendleton. He was seated in a sleek, custom-built black wheelchair. Even seated, his presence was overwhelmingly commanding. He wore a midnight blue Tom Ford tuxedo that stretched across his broad shoulders. His jaw was clenched so tight a muscle ticked beneath his skin, and his dark, piercing eyes were fixed on me with an unreadable intensity. He looked like a fallen king, proud, devastatingly handsome, and completely unapproachable. My father handed me off, his hand shaking. I stepped up onto the dais, standing just inches from Arthur's chair. The bishop began his sermon, but I wasn't listening. I was looking at Arthur. He wouldn't meet my gaze. He stared straight ahead, his profile carved from stone. When it was time for the vows, the bishop prompted us to join hands. Slowly, Arthur extended his hand. His fingers were long, slightly calloused, and trembling ever so slightly. I reached out and placed my hand in his. The moment our skin made contact, a voice echoed, clearly in the absolute center of my mind. God. Her hands are like ice. She's terrified of me. She looks like she's walking to her own execution. I should stop this. I should just let her go. I can't do this to her. I physically jumped, my head snapping around to look at the bishop, then at the groomsmen. Who had said that? The voice was deep, gravelly, and laced with profound sorrow. I looked back down at Arthur. His lips were pressed together in a thin, tight line. He hadn't spoken. She's panicking, the voice rang out again, vibrating through my skull. Look at her looking around. She hates me. I'm a pathetic, broken man chaining down an angel. Just say the word, Josie. Just run. I've already secured your father's assets in a blind trust. You don't actually have to do this. My breath caught in my throat. I stared at the man holding my hand. It was Arthur. I was hearing Arthur's inner thoughts. The revelation hit me like a freight train. He hadn't bought my family's debt to punish me. He had secured the assets in a blind trust. He was willing to let me run. In my past life, because I refused to touch him, because I treated him like a diseased pariah, I had never heard this. I had never known. Josephine, the bishop prompted gently, do you take this man? Arthur's thumb brushed the back of my hand. Please say no, his mind whispered, thick with heartbreak. Save yourself from me. Tears pricked the corners of my eyes. How could I have been so blind? I squeezed his hand, holding on to him with a fierce, possessive grip that made his head snap up in surprise. Our eyes finally locked. I do, I said. My voice was loud, clear, and steady. I absolutely do. What? Arthur's thought was a deafening shockwave of disbelief. She said it without crying? She's looking right at me. When he slid the massive, flawless, emerald-cut diamond onto my finger, his hands were remarkably steady. The bishop pronounced us husband and wife. There was a moment of awkward hesitation, the "you may kiss the bride" moment. In the past life, I had turned my cheek, offering him a humiliating, cold brush of skin. This time, I leaned down, cupped his jaw with my free hand, and kissed him fiercely on the lips. Holy shit, Arthur's mind went completely blank, followed immediately by a rush of chaotic electric warmth that made my own heart race. She kissed me. She actually kissed me. The reception at the Plaza Hotel was a masterclass in suffocating opulence. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured light over tables of caviar, champagne towers, and whispering socialites. The room was divided. Those trying to curry favor with the Pendleton Empire, and those placing bets on how long I would last before filing for a messy, scandalous divorce. I sat beside Arthur at the center of the head table. We were still touching. I had deliberately draped my hand over his on the armrest of his wheelchair. I quickly realized that the telepathy, this bizarre, miraculous side effect of my rebirth, only worked when we were in direct physical contact. The moment I let go, the comforting, anxious hum of his thoughts vanished. She's sitting so close, his mind murmured as my silk skirt brushed against his leg. She smells like vanilla and jasmine. It's intoxicating. But she's probably just keeping up appearances for the press. I need to give her space. I need to stop being so damn pathetic. I almost smiled. The ruthless, terrifying Arthur Pendleton, the man Wall Street called the Silicon Reaper, was sitting here internally panicking over the scent of my perfume. "Are you hungry?" I asked softly, leaning in closer. "You haven't touched your steak." He blinked, surprised by the gentle tone of my voice. "I'm fine, Josephine. Thank you." I couldn't eat if I tried. His inner voice betrayed him. Not with her looking at me like that, like I'm an actual human being. Before I could reply, a shadow fell over our table. I looked up, and my blood instantly ran cold. Nathaniel Sterling. He was dressed in a sharp beige suit, his blonde hair perfectly styled, wearing that easy, charming smile that had once convinced me he was my savior. Knowing what I knew now, feeling the phantom burn of poison in my throat, it took every ounce of my willpower not to pick up my butter knife and drive it into his chest. "Mr. Pendleton, Josie," Nathaniel said, bowing his head slightly. "A beautiful ceremony, truly." Arthur's hand stiffened under mine. The sudden shift in his mental state was violent. "Sterling," Arthur's inner voice snarled, a wave of dark, protective fury washing over me. "The bastard who's been skimming off Kensington Maritime. The man trying to steal my wife. If I had the use of my legs, I'd throw him through that damn plate glass window." My eyes widened slightly. Arthur knew? He knew Nathaniel was the one embezzling from my father's company? The very crime Nathaniel had pinned on my father to force the bankruptcy? "Nathaniel," I said, my voice dripping with ice. "Josie, could I steal you for just a moment?" Nathaniel asked, his eyes darting to Arthur. "An old friend wants to offer his congratulations." Privately, in my past life, this was the moment I had slipped away. Nathaniel had taken me to the balcony, kissed me, and handed me a burner phone, initiating the affair that would destroy my life. I felt Arthur begin to pull his hand away. Let her go, his mind told himself, a devastating wave of resignation flooding his thoughts. She loves him. She's always loved him. I can buy her debts, but I can't buy her heart. Just let her go. I slammed my hand down, interlocking my fingers with Arthur's so tightly he couldn't pull away. "No, Nathaniel, you cannot," I said loudly. The conversations at the surrounding tables immediately died down. Several guests turned to look at us. Nathaniel's smile faltered. "Josie, it will just take a second." I said no, I repeated, standing up but keeping my hand firmly anchored to Arthur's. "I am at my wedding reception. I am sitting with my husband. Whatever you have to say to me, you can say it in front of Arthur. We have no secrets." She called me her husband. Arthur's thoughts were spinning, a mixture of shock and a desperate, blooming hope. She just rejected him. For me, Nathaniel looked like I had just slapped him. His eyes flicked to Chloe, who was standing by the champagne tower looking equally horrified. "Josie, please, you're upset. You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying," I sneered. "And frankly, Nathaniel, given your track record with corporate finances, I don't think you and my husband should be anywhere near each other. Arthur is a busy man, and he doesn't tolerate pests. Good evening." A collective gasp echoed from the nearby tables. Nathaniel's face flushed a deep, ugly red. He opened his mouth to argue, but Arthur finally spoke. "You heard my wife, Sterling," Arthur said, his voice low, cold, and carrying an implicit threat that made the hairs on my arms stand up. "Enjoy the champagne, then find the exit." Nathaniel spun on his heel and stormed out of the ballroom. Chloe shot me a look of pure venom before scurrying after him. I sat back down, my heart pounding against my ribs. I turned to Arthur, expecting a nod of approval. Instead, he was staring at me as if I were an alien creature. "Why did you do that?" he asked softly, so quietly the guests couldn't hear. I squeezed his hand. "Because he was disrespecting you, and no one disrespects my family." "My family." Arthur's mind repeated the words like a prayer. "God, if she keeps this up, I'm going to fall in love with her all over again. And that will destroy us both." My breath caught. All over again? Before I could process the massive implication of those words, Arthur signaled to his head of security. "We're leaving," he announced abruptly. "Take us home." The drive to the Pendleton estate in the Hamptons was suffocatingly quiet. The privacy partition in the Maybach was up. I sat close to him, our thighs touching, my hand resting on his knee. He didn't pull away, but his mind was a turbulent storm of anxiety and self-doubt. She defended me. Why? Pity? Is it part of a game? No, Josie isn't manipulative. But she can't want me. Look at me. I'm half a man. Tonight is the wedding night. She's going to be terrified when we get to the house. I need to make sure she feels safe. I'll put her in the East Wing. When the car pulled up to the sprawling modern mansion overlooking the ocean, Beatrice, the elderly housekeeper, was waiting for us. Welcome home, Mr. Pendleton. Mrs. Pendleton, Beatrice said with a warm smile. I've prepared the master suite as requested. Actually, Beatrice, Arthur interrupted, his voice tight, have the guest suite in the East Wing prepared for Josephine. She'll be sleeping there. Beatrice looked confused. But sir, you heard me, Arthur said firmly. He refused to look at me. It's for the best, his mind chanted. Keep her away from my broken body. Give her the space she deserves. I stepped directly into his line of sight, crossing my arms over my chest. Cancel that, Beatrice, I said, my voice leaving absolutely no room for argument. I am not sleeping in the East Wing. Arthur frowned, a flash of genuine panic in his eyes. Josephine, be reasonable. You've had a long day. You need your own space. I leaned down, placing both my hands on the armrests of his chair, trapping him. I leaned my face close to his. Arthur Pendleton, I whispered fiercely. I am your wife, and my place is in the master suite. With you. I brushed my thumb against his cheek. If she looks at me with those eyes one more time, Arthur's mind roared, a sudden primal possessiveness shattering his self-deprecating walls. I am going to lose what little sanity I have left. I won't be able to let her go. Good, I whispered aloud, answering his unspoken thought. Don't. The heavy mahogany doors of the master suite clicked shut, sealing us inside. The room was massive, dominated by a king-sized canopy bed, a roaring fireplace, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the dark, churning Atlantic Ocean. The only sound was the crackle of the flames and the rhythmic crashing of the waves against the shore. Arthur wheeled himself toward the center of the room, stopping abruptly before he reached the bed. He sat there, his broad shoulders slumped, staring into the fire. The commanding, terrifying billionaire from the reception had completely vanished, leaving behind a man who looked utterly defeated by his own circumstances. You can take the right side of the bed, Arthur said, his voice rough and devoid of emotion. I won't bother you. I have a physical therapy routine in the morning, so I'll be out of your way early. I didn't answer. I slowly unpinned my veil, letting it fall to the plush Persian rug, and walked toward him. My heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I closed the distance between us and gently placed both of my hands on his tense shoulders. The connection was instantaneous. God, her touch burns. His inner voice groaned, a sound of pure, agonizing longing echoing in my mind. She's taking pity on me. I can't stand it. Does she even remember Seattle? The Global Tech Summit in 2021? I was just a junior analyst back then, a nobody in a cheap suit, humiliated and scrambling on the floor to pick up my spilled presentation files. Every executive stepped right over me. But not Josie. She knelt down in her silk dress, helped me gather every single paper, and smiled at me. I've been entirely hopelessly in love with her since that exact second, and now I've trapped her in a nightmare. I froze, the breath leaving my lungs in a sharp exhale. Seattle, 2021. I vaguely remembered that summit. I had attended with my father. I remembered the flustered young man who had dropped his briefcase, but I had never connected that nervous analyst to the ruthless Arthur Pendleton. He hadn't bought my family's debt for a trophy wife. He had done it to save the woman he had secretly loved for years. I slid my hands down his chest, kneeling in front of his wheelchair so we were eye to level. I kept my palms flat against his tailored shirt, feeling the rapid, thudding beat of his heart beneath my fingers. I'm not pitying you, Arthur. I said softly, looking directly into his dark, startled eyes. And I'm not trapped. He swallowed hard, his hands gripping the armrests. She's lying, his mind whispered, frantic and protective. She doesn't know the truth. I have to protect her. I can't let her find out that my paralysis wasn't an accident. If she knows that Harrison Gallagher's men cut the brake lines on my Aston Martin, she'll be terrified. If she figures out that Nathaniel is Gallagher's illegitimate son, planted as a mole to bankrupt Kensington Maritime and destroy my empire from the inside, they'll kill her too. I have to keep her in the dark. I have to play the villain so she stays away from the crossfire. A cold chill washed over me, freezing the blood in my veins. The accident wasn't an accident. It was attempted murder. And Nathaniel, the man I had foolishly trusted in my past life, the man who had eventually poisoned me, was working for Harrison Gallagher, my father's biggest corporate rival. In my previous life, because I refused to touch Arthur, I had been completely blind to this massive conspiracy. I had actively helped the very people who were trying to slaughter us both. The overwhelming weight of my past ignorance hit me, but it was quickly replaced by a sharp, burning desire for absolute vengeance. "Arthur," I whispered, my voice trembling not with fear, but with an intense, fiery resolve. "Look at me." He slowly brought his gaze down to meet mine. "I know you think you need to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders," I said, leaning in until our foreheads were almost touching. "But you are not alone anymore. Whatever enemies are waiting for us in the dark, we will face them together. I am not a fragile porcelain doll. I am a Kensington, and I protect what is mine." "What is mine?" his inner voice repeated, the sheer awe in his thoughts nearly blinding me. "She means me. She's claiming me." Slowly, hesitantly, Arthur reached up. His large, warm hands cupped my face. He traced the line of my jaw with his thumb. "Josephine," he breathed, his voice thick with a dangerous, intoxicating devotion. "You have absolutely no idea what you are getting yourself into." I smiled, a lethal, knowing smirk. Neither do they. 3 weeks later, the atmosphere in the glass-walled boardroom of Kensington Maritime was thick with tension. It was the emergency shareholder meeting. Nathaniel stood at the head of the long mahogany table wearing a smug, victorious grin. Beside him sat my stepsister Chloe, draped in a ridiculous amount of diamonds, already acting as if she owned the building. My father looked pale and sickly, clutching a stack of heavily falsified financial ledgers that Nathaniel had just presented to the board. "It brings me no joy to present this evidence," Nathaniel lied smoothly to the room of murmuring executives. "But the offshore accounts clearly show that CEO Kensington has been aggressively embezzling company funds for years. The company is completely insolvent. However, a private investor, Harrison Gallagher, is willing to buy out the remaining shares for pennies on the dollar, saving you all from total ruin." "That's a lie," my father croaked, his hands shaking. "I never authorized those transfers." "The signatures are all there, Dad," Chloe sighed, dripping with fake sympathy. "It's time to step down. Save yourself the criminal charges." I pushed open the heavy boardroom doors, the loud clack of my stilettos instantly silencing the room. I walked in, my head held high, pushing Arthur's wheelchair. He was dressed in a sharp, intimidating charcoal suit, radiating absolute authority. "I'm afraid there will be no buyout today, Nathaniel," I said, my voice echoing off the glass walls. I wheeled Arthur right to the front of the table, placing my hand firmly on his shoulder. "Here we go." Arthur's mind hummed beneath my palm, vibrating with dark, predatory amusement. "Tear them apart, my brilliant wife." "Josie," Nathaniel said, his eyes narrowing, "this is a closed board meeting, and bringing your husband is highly inappropriate." "My husband is the majority debt holder of this company, making him the only voice that actually matters," I countered seamlessly. I tossed a thick, black leather folder onto the center of the table. It landed with a heavy, satisfying thud. "And as for the embezzlement, I think the board will find the actual truth highly illuminating." Nathaniel's smug smile faltered slightly. What is that? Those are the real transaction records, I announced, staring Nathaniel dead in the eye. Records that trace the stolen Kensington funds directly into the Cayman Island shell accounts owned by Harrison Gallagher. Furthermore, there are detailed email logs connecting you, Nathaniel, directly to Gallagher's servers, which makes sense considering Harrison Gallagher is your biological father. The boardroom erupted into absolute chaos. Executives gasped, chairs scraped against the floor, and my father stared at Nathaniel in pure horror. "You're insane!" Chloe shrieked, jumping to her feet. "Those are forged! You have no proof!" "Actually," Arthur spoke up, his deep, commanding voice cutting through the noise like a newly sharpened blade. "My private investigators secured the server data 2 hours ago. The FBI is currently raiding Gallagher's corporate headquarters as we speak." I kept my hand on Arthur's shoulder, drinking in the magnificent, panicked terror blooming on Nathaniel's face. In my past life, he had looked at me with this exact same coldness as I choked on poison. "She's magnificent," Arthur thought, his mind swelling with overwhelming pride and deep, consuming love. She played them perfectly. The wail of police sirens echoed from the city streets below, growing louder until they stopped directly outside the building. Nathaniel darted toward the side exit, but 2 of Arthur's massive personal security guards immediately blocked the door. Within minutes, federal agents flooded the boardroom. I stood calmly beside Arthur as they read Nathaniel and Chloe their rights, handcuffing them both. Chloe was screaming, mascara running down her cheeks, begging me to help her. I simply turned my back. Later that evening, back in the quiet sanctuary of our master suite in the Hamptons, the adrenaline finally began to fade. The fire was roaring again, casting long, dancing shadows across the room. I was standing by the window, looking out at the dark ocean, when I heard a strange, strained sound behind me. I turned around. Arthur was not in his wheelchair. He was standing. His hands were gripping the edges of the heavy oak dresser, his knuckles white with effort. His legs were shaking violently, and his breath came in harsh, jagged gasps, but he was standing on his own 2 feet. I gasped, my hands flying to my mouth. "Arthur!" I rushed toward him, terrified he was going to fall, but he held up a hand, stopping me. "I've been working with a private neurologist for 8 months, he confessed, his voice tight with exertion. I was getting the feeling back, but I couldn't let Gallagher know I was recovering. I had to remain the crippled, easy target until I had enough evidence to bury him. He took a slow, agonizing step toward me, then another. He collapsed forward, and I caught him, bearing his weight as my arms wrapped fiercely around his waist. I pressed my cheek against his chest, crying tears of absolute, overwhelming joy. I couldn't stand the thought of not being able to walk down the aisle with her one day, his mind echoed, loud, clear, and bursting with love. I needed to stand for her, for us. I tilted my head up, looking into the eyes of the man I had once thought was my greatest nightmare. "You did it," I whispered. Arthur smiled, a real, breathtaking smile that reached his eyes and leaned down to capture my lips. Our kiss was a promise of a new life, a future rewritten by truth, vengeance, and a love that was loud enough to transcend time itself. If my journey from a tragic, betrayed pawn to a powerful wife who turned the tables on her enemies kept you on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button. Share this story with anyone who loves a fierce comeback. And don't forget to subscribe for more crazy, real-life drama twists. Your support means the world to me. Stay tuned for the next explosive chapter.